Camazotz. In Maya tradition, Camazotz represents sudden, non-moral death. He is associated with caves, darkness, and decapitation, not as punishment but as occurrence. Death arrives without warning and without explanation. This was terrifying because it offered no ethical logic. A virtuous person could die as easily as a guilty one. Within the Maya worldview, this fear was rational. Nature behaved this way through accidents, disease, and violence that struck without regard for character. Camazotz did not judge intention or behavior. He functioned as part of the cosmic machinery. He was not evil because evil implies deliberate choice. Camazotz embodied inevitability. His presence explained why life could end abruptly without meaning, appeal, or opportunity for correction. He gave form to a reality people already experienced but could not otherwise explain. Yaldabaoth. In Gnostic traditions, Yaldabaoth represents a flawed creator who governs the material world without true understanding. He is not the highest divine reality, but a lesser demiurge who mistakes authority for wisdom. This was terrifying because it suggested that existence itself was structured by ignorance. Suffering was not accidental, but built into creation. Within this worldview, fear of Yaldabaoth was rational. The world felt ordered yet unjust, lawful yet cruel. Yaldabaoth was not necessarily evil in intent. He was limited and unaware. He was unavoidable because all embodied life existed within his system. His role explained why the world could feel like a prison rather than a home, and why knowledge, not obedience, became the path to freedom. Nergal. In Mesopotamian tradition, Nergal represents plague, extreme heat, war, and mass death. He governs forces that move invisibly and devastate without warning. This was terrifying because disaster did not follow moral patterns. The faithful and the impious suffered equally. Within this worldview, fear of Nergal was rational. Summer heat brought epidemics, famine, and the collapse of social order. These events felt inevitable rather than deserved. Nergal was not feared as a sadist who delighted in suffering. He was feared as an expression of an unforgiving environment. He was not necessarily evil. He was unavoidable. His role explained why catastrophe could strike entire populations without cause and why human effort could not guarantee survival. Nergal gave a name to a world where nature itself appeared hostile and indifferent. Chernobog. In Slavic tradition, Chernobog represents misfortune, suffering, and the failure of things to unfold as hoped. He is not portrayed as an active destroyer, but as the presence behind unfavorable outcomes. This was terrifying because it suggested that harm could arise without intention or warning. Crops failed, illness struck, accidents happened. Within this worldview, fear of Chernobog was rational. Life routinely produced loss that could not be traced to wrongdoing. In some sources, Chernobog exists alongside forces of light, not in conflict but in balance. He was not necessarily opposed to good. He was not evil. He was unavoidable. His role explained why hardship and darkness were woven into existence itself rather than being temporary errors. Chernobog gave language to the experience of a world that does not always reward effort or virtue. Kali. In Hindu tradition, especially within Shakta theology, Kali represents time, destruction, and the dissolution of all forms. She embodies the force that consumes bodies, identities, and attachments. This was terrifying because nothing escapes time. Youth fades, power collapses, even the gods are subject to change. Within this worldview, fear of Kali was rational. Change and death were not moral failures but cosmic processes. Kali does not destroy out of cruelty or anger. She destroys because nothing can remain fixed. She is not evil. She is unavoidable. Her presence explains why clinging to permanence leads to suffering and why liberation requires loss. Kali reveals that comfort, identity, and certainty must all dissolve. The terror she represents is not violence, but honesty. She exposes the truth that nothing endures, and that acceptance, not resistance, is the only escape. Tezcatlipoca. In Aztec tradition, Tezcatlipoca represents fate, temptation, and inner instability. He is associated with night, mirrors, and the forces that expose human weakness. This was terrifying because collapse often came from within rather than from enemies. Leaders fell through pride, desire, or self-deception. Within this worldview, fear of Tezcatlipoca was rational. Power and success were fragile states, always vulnerable to reversal. Tezcatlipoca was not necessarily evil. He did not create corruption. He revealed it. He was unavoidable because self-knowledge itself carried danger. His role explained why individuals and societies could destroy themselves without external attack. Tezcatlipoca embodied the fear that human failure does not require outside force. It only requires opportunity, illusion, and time. Amit. In ancient Egyptian belief, Ammit represents total erasure rather than punishment. She appears during the weighing of the heart after death. If a person's heart is found heavy with imbalance, Ammit consumes it. This was terrifying because it meant the end of existence itself. There was no suffering afterward, but no memory, identity, or continuation. Within this worldview, fear of Ammit was rational. Egyptian culture placed immense value on immortality and order. Ammit was not worshipped as a goddess. She functioned as an instrument of cosmic justice. She was not evil, she was unavoidable. Her role explained why moral disorder did not lead to torment, but to deletion. Ammit represented a universe that demanded balance, not revenge, and offered no second chances once judgment was complete. Moloch. In ancient Levantine traditions, Moloch represents absolute obedience demanded by divine authority. He is associated in biblical and archaeological sources with child sacrifice, though scholars debate whether Moloch was a deity, a title, or a ritual system. This was terrifying because it placed religious duty in direct conflict with parental instinct. Within that worldview, fear was rational. Survival of the community was believed to require extreme offerings. Moloch was not approached as cruel for cruelty's sake. He embodied the idea that order and stability demanded unbearable cost. He was not necessarily evil. He was unavoidable within a system where obedience outweighed compassion. Moloch explained how belief could override instinct and why devotion could require the destruction of what was most precious. Lamashtu. In Mesopotamian belief, Lamashtu represents the terror surrounding childbirth, infant death, and maternal vulnerability. She was believed to cause miscarriages, illness, and the death of newborns. This was terrifying because such losses were common and poorly understood. Within this worldview, fear of Lamashtu was rational. Childbirth was dangerous and survival was uncertain despite ritual precautions. Lamashtu was not treated as an invader that could be destroyed. She was acknowledged as a legitimate divine force. She was not evil in a moral sense. She was unavoidable. Her role explained why intimate suffering could occur without fault or warning. Lamashtu gave cosmic meaning to personal tragedy, transforming grief into a reality that could be named rather than denied. Wero. In Maori tradition, Wero represents darkness, decay, illness, and spiritual imbalance. He is associated with forces that weaken life slowly rather than destroy it suddenly. This was terrifying because decline often arrived quietly through sickness, loss of purpose, or fractured relationships. Within this worldview, fear of Wero was rational. Health and harmony depended on balance with nature and community. When that balance failed, decay followed. Wero was not worshipped as a source of evil. He existed as a counterforce that had to be restrained. He was not evil. He was unavoidable. His role explained how life could erode from within long before death itself occurred. Wero embodied the fear of slow collapse rather than sudden catastrophe. Itzpapalotl. In Aztec tradition, Itzpapalotl represents the union of beauty and violent death. Her name means obsidian butterfly, merging the symbol of the soul with the blade of sacrifice. This was terrifying because it erased the boundary between creation and destruction. Birth, transformation, and death were inseparable processes. Within this worldview, fear of Itzpapalotl was rational. Childbirth and ritual sacrifice carried real danger and cosmic consequence. She was associated with women who died giving birth, believed to hold unstable spiritual power. Itzpapalotl was not evil. She was unavoidable. Her role explained why life-giving moments could also bring devastation. She embodied the truth that creation itself is never gentle or safe. Ereshkigal. In Mesopotamian tradition, Ereshkigal represents the inescapability of death and the permanence of the underworld. She rules the realm where all the dead arrive regardless of status or virtue. This was terrifying because death offered no reward, trial, or redemption. Once a soul entered her domain, it did not return. Within this worldview, fear of Ereshkigal was rational. Life was fragile, and the afterlife provided no compensation for suffering endured on Earth. Even the gods feared her realm and were diminished by entering it. Ereshkigal was not cruel. She did not punish or torment. She governed. She was unavoidable. Her role explained why death was final and why existence did not guarantee justice beyond the grave. Ereshkigal gave form to the fear that all journeys eventually end in silence. Hell. In Norse tradition, hell represents an afterlife defined by cold continuation rather than reward or punishment. She rules the realm where those who did not die in battle are sent. This was terrifying because it offered no glory, no redemption, and no transformation. Existence simply continued in diminished form. Within this worldview, fear of hell was rational. Life was harsh, and death did not promise relief. Hell herself is not a tormentor. She is distant and impartial. She does not judge worthiness, she receives. She is not evil, she is unavoidable. Her role explained why death did not resolve suffering and why endurance, not hope of reward, defined meaning. Hell embodied the fear that existence does not improve after death, but merely persists without warmth, honor, or release. Ahriman. In Zoroastrian tradition, Ahriman represents conscious opposition to order, truth, and life itself. He is not chaos by accident, but destruction by intent. This was terrifying because it suggested that suffering was not only natural, but actively resisted by an intelligent force. Disease, decay, and moral corruption were understood as expressions of his influence. Within this worldview, fear of Ahriman was rational. The world appeared structured yet constantly threatened by collapse. Ahriman was not a misunderstood force of balance. He was a negation of harmony. Yet he was not omnipotent. His power existed within limits and time. He was unavoidable because struggle itself defined existence. Ahriman explained why goodness required effort, vigilance, and endurance, and why the world could never rest in permanent peace. Ancient people did not imagine terrifying gods out of cruelty, but out of honesty about the world they lived in. These figures gave names to death, loss, decay, and forces that could not be controlled or reasoned with. Terrifying gods were not monsters, but explanations that helped people face reality rather than escape it.